Welcome to the memorial service of Roger and Pat Dickeson. Throughout the course of our memorial, you will have the opportunity to hear music that was significant to both Roger and Pat, beginning with Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, a piece that launched Stravinsky into his career as a composer, the premiere of which, a review said, "Mark well, a man on the eve of celebrity." A fitting review as we begin our service of a couple who meant so much to the people gathered here today, to her children, to her friends and family. It is also a piece of music that is marked by its passion and love, which as stories are shared today, you will note that this is a couple that was well loved and knew how to love well, as marked by the fact that Roger and Pat wished for their ashes to be commingled and placed in the columbarium here at the Unitarian Church. My name is Jacob Buchholz, and I am a pastor at First Plymouth Church here in Lincoln. But today I have the honor of channeling the words of a man much older and wiser than I, Charles Stephen, longtime minister here at the Unitarian Church, who has written a reflection for Roger and Pat that I will share with you today. Here are the words of Charles Stevens. There is life, and there a step away is death. There is the human story, our story. There is the old human struggle and its fruits together. There is the text and the sermon, the real and the ideal in one. Our lives take meaning from their interlacing with each other. This is so for those lives, now over, who reach forward, as it were, to touch our own. And it is so for our own lives and for that web of relationships which are human society and human families. We gather this day in affirmation of an ageless truth, that as none of us lives alone, so no one dies alone. We are diminished by the death of Pat Dickeson, and gather here, this family and these friends, to remember and to mourn and to look ahead. Emily Dickinson's poem begins, "Each that we lose takes part of us." We honor the truth of that thought. All that we surely know about those we have loved and lost is that they would wish to be remembered as they were. The highest tribute of our dead is not grief, but gratitude. We grieve, to be sure, but we also meet here in gratitude for a long and good life. We grieve, of course, only for those we have loved. We are here this day because a much-loved person has died, but in truth we are met here because she has lived and touched our lives, deeply touched our lives. How fortunate were and are the children of Pat Dickeson, and to be sure their father, Roger. We also remember him, a man she married twice. Following a midlife divorce, this remarkable and loving couple chose to remarry, and the ceremony took place next to a fireplace in the social area of this building. As their minister for many years, I also felt fortunate. Pat, with a lovely sense of humor, enjoyed commenting on my New England accent. Cart was a word, she told me, that always sounded like caught. Despite their years apart, they remained, to friends, always Roger and Pat. They were strong supporters of this congregation and of this minister who arrived here in 1961. When he went to Selma in 1965, they gave him strong support and I think some dollars to help. Roger and Pat's lives are over. We will miss them. Gibran wrote, "I would not exchange the sorrows of my heart for the joys of the multitude, and I would not have the tears that my sadness makes to flow from my every part turn into laughter. I would that my life remain a tear and a smile, a tear to unite me with those of broken heart, a smile to be a sign of my joy in existence." And here today to share with you their tears and their smiles are Pat and Roger's children. But first, not without another song for us.
Our folks, Pat and Roger, loved bossa nova. They absolutely loved it. And my mom especially loved The Girl from Ipanema. And I think she kind of fancied herself the girl from Ipanema. And she certainly was beautiful enough to be the girl from Ipanema. When she and my father were invited to fancy evening gatherings, she always let me do her makeup and her hair, which I think now as an adult is a pretty risky thing, letting your 15-year-old daughter do that. However, she was willing. So we'd go into the master bathroom, and I'd seat her on the toilet, facing away from me, so she'd straddle it, and I would rat the heck out of her hair until it was just huge. And I would either style it into a Brigitte Bardot beehive with so many bobby pins that it was ridiculous, and then just spray the heck out of it. Or I would style it into a Jacqueline Kennedy kind of a thing. Either way, she looked beautiful. Then I'd flip her around and do her makeup. And then she would stand, look at herself in the mirror, and make Vogue magazine faces at herself. She was so beautiful. She just looked stunning. Then she and my dad would get dressed in their evening wear, and they'd come out of their bedroom, arm in arm, stop and say goodbye to us kids, and I don't think I've ever seen a more stunning couple as Pat and Roger Dickeson. My father had a wonderful extemporaneous humor. It just sort of creeped up on you and surprised you. One particular time I remember distinctly, we were visiting our cousins, the Osmusons, at Pipe Lake, which was in Wisconsin. The Osmusons had a cabin, and we would visit. And my father had a habit of standing at the head of the table after the evening meal was done and issuing a proclamation of some kind. So one particular night, it was August, it was hot and muggy, so we all had as few clothes on as possible. Dad had a pair of plaid Bermuda shorts fastened under his belly. I'm sure a pair of underwear and flip-flops. So we got finished eating dinner. He stands and says, "I'm sure you're all wondering why I called this meeting." And his shorts dropped to his ankles. That is exactly the reaction that he got. We were hysterically laughing. It couldn't have been timed better. Timing was everything with Dad, and it was wonderful. And he shared in our laughter. He was a very funny, wonderful man. I will miss them both terribly. Thank you so much for coming today.
That, of course, is the Dave Brubeck Quartet. I'm sure you all recognize that piece. It's called Take 5. We had music playing in the house all the time. We had Stravinsky, Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, Miles Davis, just everything. We got such a wonderful cross-section of music. And my parents probably didn't realize that they were causing a lifetime addiction for their son. But when I was a kid, my dad could do everything. He could fix a car, he could spell every word, he could act, he was a lawyer, he could fly a plane, you name it, he could do it. He knew just about everything there was to know about everything. Then one day, Dad and Mom decided that they wanted to learn how to play the organ. They went out and bought a really nice Conn organ, put it in the den, and took lessons. Now, Mom had a musical bent. Mom had some talent, and she could play. Dad, God love his soul, was awful. He stunk, and I was 7 years old walking down the hall, and I could tell he was awful. And I said to myself, by God, there's one thing that Roger Dickeson can't do. Maybe I can do it. So that probably planted the lifelong passion. When I was a kid, Mom knew everything. She knew about science. She knew about music. She knew about acting, obviously. She knew English backwards. She knew English forwards. I didn't realize until later in life that Mom had perfect pitch, which I inherited from her, and some of us call it a blessing, some of us call it a curse. But as adults, Mom and I would sit and talk about physics for hours. The type that makes your head spin, like quantum mechanics, relativity, and cosmology. You know, typical mother and son discussion stuff. You all do. She was always fond of asking questions like, what was before the Big Bang? What's outside of the universe? Or, if the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into? She always thought about the big, big picture, the really big picture. And those were great conversations. When I was about 13, we took a vacation with our family boat. Mr. Fu, I think it was. Yeah, it's so named because the letters on the boat were NB255 Fu, F-U. And I don't remember where I parked today, but I do remember the number of that boat for what it's worth. Now, I was about 13. I was barely old enough to pilot it, but I didn't have the sense to pilot it carefully. So I'm driving the boat, coming into the dock for the first time, and Dad, standing, close to me, said, "Slow down, slow down, slow down." Well, I was 13. My dad didn't know everything after all. So I kept heading for the dock, going way too fast, and Dad stood by the side of the boat, getting ready to fend the boat off from the dock. Sure enough, when we got to the dock, Dad stuck his foot out. The boat hit pretty hard, and he went flying into the air. Off the boat, into the water. Plunk. And at that time, Dad was kind of heavy, so it was a good-sized plunk. So we all looked in shock, and he didn't come up, and he didn't come up, and he didn't come up. Meanwhile, a 13-year-old Doug is thinking, if he doesn't come up, I will have killed him. On the other hand, if he does come up, he's going to kill me. So as an adult, there were a few instances like that. And I always made sure to remind my dad that he didn't kill me when I was a teenager, although we had every right to on several occasions. By the time I was 20, I knew that I was going to be wearing one of these for the rest of my life. This one, incidentally, is named after my mom, Patricia. I also realized that I had a large character deficiency because I was a white middle-class kid and I didn't have any reference for what the blues were about. So how could I learn how to play the blues? Whenever I'd play a solo that needed some deep down pain, I'd think about the worst thing that could possibly happen, and that was my mom passing away. And so that's how I learned how to play the blues. That's my mom speaking to you. So now that day has come, and yet I still have the beautiful memory of spending Mom's last few hours with her just a couple of days ago. I got to sing songs to her, and I prefer to think that she could hear me. Got a chance to play my little prayer bowl for her. This isn't mine, but these are wonderful. Had a chance to sing to her, make her memory and her journey just a little bit easier.